Više od 3 meseca Zapad Rusiju optužuje za ničim izazvanu invaziju na Ukrajinu. Sa druge strane, Vladimir Putin tvrdi da je reč o preventivnom odupiranju agresiji. O tome šta je istina i kakva je uloga velikih sila u ovom sukobu, razgovaram sa Danielom Ganserom. On je istoričar i stručnjak za međunarodnu politiku. Mr. Ganser, thank you for speaking to Euronews.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
In your latest book, which was published before the start of the war in Ukraine, you write that NATO expansion to the east angers Russia. Has the West, as the Kremlin claims, really provoked this conflict, or is this an unprovoked aggression by Vladimir Putin?
It is, as you say. I have written in my book on America that the expansion of NATO has provoked Russia, because in 1990, that's already 30 years ago, the Americans promised to Gorbachev that they will not expand NATO. But then in 1999, Poland and other countries entered, and in 2004, Romania, Bulgaria, Iceland, Lithuania, many other countries joined NATO, and this is seen as a provocation by Russia. I think, yes, NATO expansion was unnecessary and a provocation.
So what is the role of the United States in this war in Ukraine, which started on February 24th?
The United States is behind the scenes. Obviously, on the first sight, it's a war between Russia and Ukraine, so between Putin and Zelensky. But if you look behind the scenes, the Americans have overthrown the government in Ukraine in 2014. So that was a coup d'etat. Victoria Nuland at the time said, fuck the EU. That's why many historians call it the fuck the EU coup d'etat. And this coup d'etat has led to 8 years of civil war. And that again has led to the illegal invasion of Ukraine by Russia. So America's involvement is very big.
And what do you think about the position of the European Union? The sixth package of sanctions has been adopted. The seventh is already being announced. What are the consequences for Europe?
Well, you know, I don't think that sanctions will stop the war. What we really see is that sanctions drive up the prices for oil and gas, because if you make something scarce, it becomes more expensive. So it could be that Russia actually gets more money because of the sanction by selling less at a higher price. But, you know, these sanctions also cover the media sector. And there, I think it's not good to have sanctions, because people should be informed by different perspectives and hear different voices. That's very important.
But what that means for EU-Russia relations in the long term?
Well, it means that these relations are at a very low point. It's like a quarrel between two adults, you know, a wife and a husband, and they really have a huge fight. They don't talk to each other anymore, and that is bad. It is very bad, because if you look at the map of Europe and Asia, you see that Europe is actually going towards the Ural. Part of Russia is in Europe and part of Russia is in Asia. And actually, these countries will not change their place. They will not go to South America or to Africa. So they will stay where they are. And in the long run, the European Union and Russia need a working relationship. Again, they need to have good contacts. Right now, it's a time of crisis, and they have a hard time to even speak to each other.
Switzerland, long-time neutral country, this time partially renounced its neutrality. What do you think should be the Swiss position in this conflict?
That is right. I'm a Swiss citizen, and I'm now in Basel, Switzerland. And I was very sad to see that Switzerland is actually now following the United States and the European Union and imposed sanctions on Russia. The war started, the Russian invasion started on February 24, and for 4 days Switzerland said, no, we stay neutral. But then on February 28, the Swiss government said, okay, now we drop neutrality and we follow the sanctions. I think it's a mistake. Contrary to Germany, we do not send any weapons into Ukraine. So we stay on that level, at least we stay neutral. We don't send weapons to Ukraine. But on the level of economic warfare, we're part of the American and European coalition. And I think that's a mistake. I mean, not even Turkey is imposing sanctions on Russia, and Turkey is a NATO member. So I think Switzerland should have stayed neutral, but we didn't.
Serbia, on the other hand, still avoids to impose sanctions on Russia. Do you think that's a smart policy, and is it sustainable?
I think it's a smart policy. I think it's important to have a clear policy, and I know that the pressure from the US and the European Union on Serbia obviously is very, very big. So I just hope that Serbia is able to keep up that policy. Keep in mind, you know, China and India, which are huge countries, they are not going into this sanctions policy. And also keep in mind that when Germany bombed Serbia in '99, the Swiss didn't impose sanctions on Germany, or, you know, didn't impose sanctions on Bill Clinton, the American president. So really, there have been a lot of illegal wars. There have also been the attack on Iraq in 2003 by US President Bush, and we didn't impose sanctions on the US.
In March, you said, my impression is that Putin is attempting to copy a move NATO used in Kosovo in 1999. What do you think, what did you want to tell?
When you have a country like Serbia and somebody splits a part of it out of it, so the Kosovo part was split out from Serbia, you know, people in Serbia said, well, you can't take a part out of the country. And there was a huge debate in the Western media whether you can do this or you can not do it. And now I have the impression that Putin wants to split out the Donbass out of Ukraine. And when people then come and say, oh, you can't do that, he will say, well, you did that in Serbia by taking out Kosovo and making it an independent country. It's just a guess. I'm not sure what really Putin will do. But he obviously does not want to see the entire Ukraine as part of NATO. I think that is his main idea. And I think the idea of the United States is actually to draw Ukraine into NATO. So these are the two opposing forces. And I think the solution really would be if the Ukraine would say, we are a neutral country, we're not going to be part of NATO, but in exchange, we want the Russian forces to withdraw. I think that would be a solution.
But it looks like that we are far away from the solution. And at the end, can you tell us who do you think will be the winner of this conflict?
It's true. We're very far away from this solution, and I don't know how the conflict will end. I'm just saying that the neutrality for Ukraine, for me, would be the best, you know, vision for the future. I don't see that Russia accepts ever Ukraine as a NATO country, and I don't see that Ukraine ever accepts Russian troops on its soil. So you really need a solution there, and I think that is a good solution. Obviously, the worst thing would be if the war spreads to Poland and to other NATO countries, because then you immediately have World War III, and the United States is an atomic power and Russia is an atomic power. So we really should do everything to come to the negotiating table and find a peaceful dialogue, because in the end it will be a compromise between Zelensky and Putin. But you know, Biden and Zelensky are in the same camp, so Biden has to call Zelensky and tell him to reach a compromise with Putin.
Mr. Ganser, thank you for speaking to Euronews Serbia.
Thank you very much.